Distractaholics. I'm Morgan.
I'm Tyler.
And we are here this week discussing the movie Shutter Island. So I haven't watched it in 2 weeks, so I'm a little foggy on it. But that wasn't my first time watching it, so I think I'm going to be good. Tyler, you rewatched it just this week, right?
Yeah, but I also could have just told you everything that happened in the movie.
How many times have you seen it?
A few. You know, in the neighborhood of like 9-10 times.
Really?
You know, that's still
Really?
not too many.
I think I've only seen it like maybe 3, maybe 4 times.
But I love the ending of this movie so much, Morgan, that sometimes I'll cut it down and just watch like the last section.
Last part. It's such a tragic movie, and I remember the first time I watched it, I had no idea what was happening.
It's interesting that you called it a tragedy, because I don't know that I would have defined it as a tragedy. I think, again, it's a hero story.
I guess I can agree with that. So, as always, if you haven't watched Shutter Island, stop now because spoilers lie ahead and we don't want to ruin the movie for you. But it is a great movie and we both definitely recommend it. It is not a horror movie, as a lot of people think it is. Are you going to argue with me about it?
I think, okay, now hold on. I think the first time you see it, I think it is a little scary. But after you've seen it that first time, so there's a lot of suspense that builds, you know, especially when they get into like Ward C. There's a lot of that stuff that's like heavy, like suspense that builds up. And maybe horror is not the right word, but you definitely feel it the first time.
A psychological thriller, I would call it more
definitely.
Psychological thriller than a horror, because there isn't anything that I would deem scary.
You're saying you're not having nightmares about this movie.
Debatably so, but well, the only reason I would be having nightmares about it, I think the only way people find it scary is that it takes place in a insane asylum in the 1950s. And the conditions of an insane asylum during that time, that's horrifying for me. So there, I can classify that as horror.
Wait, Morgan, we should give people a quick summary and who's in it.
Yes. All right, let's go.
All right. Let me read this real quick. We got a short one for you from IMDb.
And it's a good one, too.
Yes, it is. In 1954, a U.S. Marshal investigates the disappearance of a murderer who escaped from a hospital for the criminally insane. Ooh. All right. This is going to just star Leonardo DiCaprio. As our main character, Teddy Daniels.
Tyler's MVP is
my
Leo
favorite actor. That was pretty good, Morgan. I'm going to use that.
Woohoo.
We got Mark Ruffalo playing his partner, Chuck. I think that's Yule. And Sir Ben Kingsley playing Dr. Cawley.
It's a pretty good cast. Just with them being the 3 main people, that's a good cast. We start out the movie with Teddy Daniels, who we find out later is also
Andrew Laeddis.
And we start out with him on a boat coming to this island. My first question is, why is it called Shutter Island?
You couldn't have prepped me with these questions beforehand.
Nope, gotta put you on the spot.
I don't actually know. So Dr. Cawley calls it Shutter Island, but I guess I never...
Like, is that actually the name of the island? Or is it a nickname that the surrounding townspeople, or like, you know how places get
all right. Here's my best BS.
Okay.
Here's my best BS, Morgan. Right. It's called Shutter Island because the people that live there have been shuttered from society. They're not wanted anymore. They've been ostracized, and now they're being pushed to this island. Thus, Shutter Island.
I can roll with your explanation of why it's called Shutter Island. I'll take that as an answer.
It sounds good. You would have known I made that up if I hadn't told you.
Oh, yeah. If anyone has any other insights or throughout the podcast, any questions that we're asking, discussion topics, if you have any insights at all, please hit us up. Let us know what you're thinking about this. Give us some insight because we are not all knowing I will have you believe that we are not all knowing, despite what Tyler thinks.
I have sold everybody this concept of we are all knowing. You're really hurting my credibility here, Morgan.
I know. Okay, so when the marshal gets to the island and he's first walking into the asylum and everything, he's getting ready.
Ashcliff,
okay. I wanted to say like Heathcliff or something, so that's fine. So he's walking in, he's getting ready to walk into the main building, and there's this lady who looks extremely, extremely creepy. She's very, very thin, very pale. She's got huge circles under her eyes. She almost looks like a corpse, and her hair is very thin and balding. And she looks at
Teddy,
thank you. She looks at Teddy, and she puts her finger to her lips and kind of hushes it, like, I don't know, preluding almost to that something is amiss or that there's a secret going on. And rewatching this, I'm thinking, does she know what's going on within the asylum and what they're like, that they're playing with his head, and that she's like trying to give him a hint that something is amiss? Or is she just telling him that there are secrets about? Or do you think that's supposed to signify something, or am I just looking in too deep?
No. First of all,
I'm getting too out of hand here.
No. Let me explain it.
Okay.
It was apparent, especially after they get into the asylum, that all those people were coached. You saw that the other marshal couldn't get his gun off, which I had never really put together until after I got the ending.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't get the gun off because he wasn't really a U.S. Marshal. So it was apparent that those people were all coached, and I think everybody was in on it. And the people that they allowed to talk to Teddy were the people that they thought they could control.
And that actually leads to one of my next thoughts. And the first time I'm watching this, obviously I wasn't having any of these thoughts because I didn't know that the whole thing was a facade
Game.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say a game.
They're playing with his head. It's a game.
We'll get to that, okay? But I want, like, how did they get all these potentially mentally unstable patients to go along with all these things? Or my other thought was, were some of them or all of them that were posing as patients that he was interviewing, were they all actually orderlies that were made to look like it?
They show that some of them are definitely patients. You know, the one lady that says she killed her husband or whatever, which she writes down in the notebook, run. That's definitely a person. Then you had the creepy guy. It was apparent that he was a very troubled individual that was there because he killed somebody.
Yeah.
But you are right, because I believe it was the missing patient that he found. I think that was a nurse. Was it not?
The one that they say where they have her in the room and they're like, oh, we found her. It's fine. Everything's fine. Yes, she was actually a nurse. I know at the end they say that they have tried this before, but how many times do you think that they tried that? And was he just, because of his trauma, was he just reverting back to his pretend world each time?
What they said was, we were close to a breakthrough before, and that in order to prevent a lobotomy, they had to go through this whole elaborate ruse. So they hadn't done this exact
specific
game right. They were close to a breakthrough before they thought that they were going to be able to help him. And then I guess somehow they got somebody to go along with this whole game.
So I wonder what type of therapy or treatment they were doing on him prior to this, that they were close to a breakthrough, but that they decided that they had to go to such extreme means.
You know, it's tough to say because I'm not in any way a medical professional, but it's also because of the time, and even now the human, I don't want to say the human brain, but it's such a hard thing to understand.
It's very complicated.
Right. Psychology's not an exact science.
No.
It is and it's not. It's just there's so much we don't know. So in the 50s, I feel like that was just, especially with all these guys coming back from the war, it was really just getting into that. So they don't really address it in the movie at all, but we can only imagine that it wasn't the best treatment, obviously, because he kept reverting.
Right.
And we can tell that this whole ruse actually might have worked.
I know we talked about the nurse who they pretend is Rachel and that they found her and they have her in the room and stuff. But who is the lady that he meets in the cave? Is she...
That's all in his head.
I was going to say, is she actually real or is he imagining that entire thing? And does he act like, did they actually pose a body or something to look like a body in the water? Or that was all just something that he saw in his mind or created
that was
in
all
his
in his
mind?
head. All in his head. If you remember, he comes in and talks to Dr. Cawley and he says, "Oh, I just saw Dr. So-and-so in the,
right.
Over the, whatever, the mountain." And he says, "No, she's made up. She's dead," or something like that.
Okay.
So that's all in his head.
We talked about how they got the patients to roll along with stuff, but obviously they didn't predict the huge storm coming through and the power outages and the patients and prisoners escaping and that entire mess happening. What would have caused it to be enough and just to be like, we have to shut this down. We can't go on with this. Like, everything's out of control.
Well, I feel like, didn't they try that towards the beginning? Because they refused to let him really talk to anybody, and it felt like they were trying to get him to back off in general. But he kept being more and more aggressive.
And more suspicious, too.
Right. And then they found out the storm was coming, and at that point, it was already too late.
They were in too deep.
Right. They couldn't get him off the island, and any more denials would make all of their work for nothing. So I feel like they were in it too deep, right, almost right at the beginning. So they just had to keep going with it.
They probably didn't think the entire thing through, to be honest.
Who approved this treatment? That is crazy.
Well, like we said, it's the 1950s. Mental health care and treatment was not an exact science. It still has a lot of growing and figuring out to do, but especially during that time and during this time period, I think that people were so desperate to make anything work. In the 1950s is that's when lobotomies started to kind of phase out. So I truly think, as they said in the end of the movie, that this was their last ditch effort to keep him from having a lobotomy. In the last part, Dr. Cawley is talking to him about his situations in the war, saying that he didn't know if he had experienced all those traumas in the war really, or if it was part of the persona that he made up. Do you think the PTSD from World War II contributed to his mental break along with the tragedy with his family, or was it just a made-up memory to support this made-up life? Yeah,
because when they pull up his file, they talk about how he was at I want to say it was Dachau, but I might be making that name up. So he was at that camp, and it feels weird that he would have made that up with that one detail there. So it feels like that's probably a true thing. And all those things he was reliving, them shooting the German, or finding the German officer that had tried to kill himself and all that.
Right.
I think that was all real. That was all his actual memories. I love the end of this movie. It blew my mind because, okay, all right, let me step back for a second. So the journey that they take you on in this movie, this whole, we got to find this lady and we've got to solve this crime, blah, blah, blah. That's all really good, but the ending really sells it. So Dr. Cawley's treatment worked. And here's why we know that. Because Morgan, we talked about this. You weren't sure. You weren't 100% sure if it worked or not.
I was, but I wanted to know your opinion.
Okay, good. Well, we're on the same page then. So he says to his partner Chuck and his psychologist, "This place makes me wonder, which would be worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man?" And then he stands up without anyone prompting him and walks towards the lobotomy set, the people carrying around the tools for the lobotomy. So he's choosing, instead of, because now he remembers what he's done, he's choosing to essentially go through this lobotomy so he doesn't have to live with that anymore.
One of my favorite quotes, I know he's not dying in this situation, but one of my favorite quotes is, anyone can die, but it takes courage to live. And it takes courage to face everything that you have going on with yourself. So just keep that in mind, everyone.
If I may quote Hamilton here, Morgan, to lighten us up a little bit.
Is this the first Hamilton quote of this episode? Because I haven't caught any other ones.
Morgan, I've been really good. George Washington says, dying is easy, young man. Living is harder.
Yeah. Did George Washington actually say that in real life?
Probably not, but it doesn't matter. This is Hamilton. It's all real.
It's all... don't get me started.
Morgan, how can you hate Hamilton? Oh my God, it's so good.
I hate it so much. No, I don't hate it. I really don't.
Let it be known. She says hate it. I'm not cutting this.
I don't.
She says that she hates it.
I don't hate it. Eventually, we're gonna have to do a Hamilton episode, which means I'll have to watch it again. I'm not mad about it, but it's not my favorite musical, and regardless of what Tyler wants to believe, I do enjoy musicals. We've discussed how much we enjoy this movie. My overall thoughts for this movie, I did not see the ending coming, and it was such a good build up to get there. I was interested throughout the entire movie. It kept my attention, and it was a good plot line. But looking back now after rewatching it, the entire plot is so unrealistic. I don't think it's something that could have been doable. You can't control that atmosphere. I don't feel like it was realistic as something to do. But and then you're gonna make me rate this.
That's okay. Let me talk. I'm gonna give you time. Okay. I'm gonna let you finish.
All right, Kanye.
But I'm gonna take over here and talk about this movie. I know people that just don't get this movie. They don't like it. I think once you step back and you look at the whole picture, the plot, I agree with you, is a little far-fetched, but they were really trying to save somebody's life, save them from a lobotomy. That's very cool. I think the first time you see it, that plot and that build-up, all the mystery they're building is great.
Yes.
But here's my thing with this movie, and I love it. I would say after you've watched it the first time, it's not terribly rewatchable. So as I watched it, I didn't really take any notes because everything that happens is a game. It's all made up. It's really nothing that you have to remember
or analyze anything. Because right. It's not like if Rachel really would have been missing, we could have discussed, where do you think she was, or why do you think she got out, or
exactly
did she really commit the crime that she was there for? But she's a fictional character reflecting the actions of his wife. So yeah, there isn't a ton to discuss about this movie besides, I feel, the things that we've touched on. Besides watching Shutter Island, what else were you doing to distract yourself this past week?
Morgan, I made this awesome Distractaholic swag. Ooh, see, look at my hat.
It's so fancy.
Audio listeners, you don't get to see in a t-shirt.
I can't wait for mine.
Other than that, I've been recently obsessed with the Greatest Showman soundtrack, in particular 2 songs.
What song?
And it's not important.
Well, you made a couple of sweatshirts for Greatest Showman. Or t-shirts.
Yes,
they were t-shirts.
They were t-shirts.
Are those your 2 favorite songs?
Yes.
Were they depicting your 2 favorite songs?
Okay. Well, of course, Morgan puts stuff together way too easy. Yes, Rewrite the Stars is my favorite song. I am obsessed. Yeah. And the material is retro reflective or whatever. So when it hits light, it shines real bright because stars.
That's awesome. You're so creative.
I know. Sometimes I'm impressed even myself.
Oh, I think I did get chills during that song. I have mixed feelings about Greatest Showman.
Oh God!
Big surprise.
She kisses him.
I don't care.
He gets mad and rejects her.
He left his family. We're spoiling. We're having spoilers right now. Since you didn't ask, Tyler, why?
I'm sorry. Let me go back. Let me do this again. Morgan.
Yeah.
Morgan.
Yes.
What are you distracting yourself with, this past week and maybe even this coming week? Give me a little preview into the life of Morgan.
Into my very deep, currently unemployed life.
You're not unemployed. This podcast is a full-time job.
This is my full-time job right now. So this week we got about a foot of snow, I would say. So on one of the days this week, I went outside and played with my babies in the snow, and they absolutely loved it. And I built a little snow fort for myself and the dogs. And as I'm building this snow fort, because I can't ever turn my brain off, which people who can do that, I'm very envious of you. But as I'm building the snow fort, I'm thinking, why as adults do we stop playing in the snow? Or even like, why don't we get enjoyment with shoveling the driveway? And like, I've never been a snow person. Like, this is the first year that I've actually enjoyed the snow. And maybe it's because I currently don't have a job and I'm not forced to go anywhere. But like, why don't we take the time anymore to go out and have snowball fights, or to go ice skating, or to just go play in the snow with our kids or our dogs, or build a freaking snowman? It was just so enjoyable for me to go outside by myself and play in the snow. Next on what I'm distracting myself with, I had a lovely wine and video chat with one of my best friends.
Thank you. That's at me.
I'm not drinking wine right now, but
I think she just said I wasn't one of
you
her
are
best
also
friends.
one. You have become one. That's just some insider information. Tyler and I, before this podcasting experience, we were not extremely close friends. We were friends, I would say, but we didn't have a lot of in-depth conversations, and this podcast has really helped our friendship grow.
Absolutely. She thought I was weird before.
I said you were mean.
That's true.
My
first time she met me, she said I was, quote, mean. End quote.
Because I brought you guys donuts and you were just mean. I didn't even remember.
Mean.
I didn't even remember this situation. Okay, what else did I do this week? I watched Call the Midwife, which I'm obsessed with. I'm almost done with it, but this is one of the rare medical shows that I can absolutely say that I love. What else did I do? I played with my 2-year-old, not really nephew, but I call him my nephew. Spending my time with him, it's really, it's awakened my inner child. He has such a fun imagination, and it's so fun to just be able to play pretend again. I don't know if it's because I just don't have anything else to do, but I'm just like, why isn't it okay to play pretend anymore? And actually, I think a lot of people still do, like playing the different games online and stuff. You can create these characters. Playing Dungeons and Dragons, you get to create this character and you get to go on these adventures, or even just reading books, watching movies, distracting yourself with all these things. It's our way to continue to go on these childlike adventures, and that's really awesome.
And that's why we are the Distractaholics.
Tune in next week, and we will be covering
The Great Gatsby.
Oh, I got some reading to do. I can do it. I'm a fast reader.
Thanks, folks.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to all of our social media stuff. Send us a email. Give us a comment. Tell us what you liked, didn't like. Give us some things that you want us to cover, and we will be more than happy to. Thanks, guys. It's been fun.